I follow a lot of educators on social media, professors, teachers, instructional designers, and I'm noticing a clear trend. More and more of us are returning to analog tools in our classrooms. I am seeing more handwritten exams. Yes, those blue books that I used to use in college, I'm pretty sure they're coming back. I'm noticing in-class writing sessions. I'm noticing some professors telling their students not to bring their devices, no phones, no laptops allowed. There are a lot of folks who are requiring oral presentations, whether they're pre-recorded or live, as part of their final. And I'm even noticing more and more people going back to using paper journals, printed worksheets, or even whiteboards. This shift is happening because educators are noticing that analog methods facilitate better learning environments. And it's a bit of a pushback in the age of AI where it feels like it's harder to tell if a student's actually learning or if they're just copy pasting things into a GPT and having it generate some sort of trash, just AI generated gunk that doesn't sound like them and doesn't prove that they've learned anything that semester. So professors, understandably, are trying to return to different ways of learning, of trying to find ways to push back or resist the use of AI. And at the end of the day, it's about making sure that our students learn and strengthen core skills, things like critical thinking, communication, writing, and of course, analog tools make that possible. This is happening for me as well as a homeschool educator. I've had to grapple with this idea of at what point do I introduce AI to my children? And when I do, what's important for them to learn first. So right now, I have a middle schooler and I use physical textbooks, workbooks, printed worksheets, and a lot of hands-on learning. Of course, he also uses a tablet, a computer, types assignments, etc. So yeah, my middle schooler is familiar about AI. He's familiar about the concept of media literacy, but I haven't introduced GPT tools yet. Why not? Because, well, I'm a little afraid, but I also want him to build a strong foundation in writing and research skills and problem solving first before he starts using AI, because I want AI to be optional. I want it to be a tool. I want it to be an assistant. I don't want it to ever have to replace his skills. So, why does this even matter to you? Why am I bringing this up on the podcast? Because whether you're a college student, a grad student, or an educator, you might find yourself navigating the same predicament where maybe you are relying on digital tools for your own work and life, but you also are feeling pulled towards doing something else, towards bringing back some more tactile ways of doing your work. And this time of year is a really great time of year to consider it because many of us are thinking about getting those annual calendars, those planners, or other tools that can help us best plan for the year ahead. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about analog tools that you can use to boost your productivity and your joy. Welcome to the award-winning Grad School Femtoring Podcast, the place for first-gen BIPOCs to listen in on inclusive grad school stories and learn about personal development and productivity tips. This is Doctora Yvette Martinez Vu, a certified coach, consultant, and author, and I will be serving as your Femtor, providing you with insider knowledge to help you reach your personal and professional goals. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. This is your host, Doctora Yvette. Today, I've got a fun episode. This episode came up in conversation in one of my recent group coaching sessions. So I have a group coaching program called the Grad Empowerment Coaching Circle, and it's predominantly a group of grad students and professionals, women of color, who are trying to build community and have a support system as they work on their dissertations, their research, their writing, etc. And so we were having a conversation around systems. That was the theme of the week. And one of the questions that came up was someone asked me for my recommendations for planners. And as we talked about planners, I started thinking more about that, about, well, a planner is another tool and it's an analog tool. And I'm hearing around the same time, again, because I follow a lot of educators on social media, I'm hearing this pushback against AI and more educators returning back to analog ways. And I'm noticing even for myself, I'm returning to more analog tools too. So I thought, let me bring it up on the show because a lot of us are thinking about this. And I thought, why not provide you with some options if you too are interested in returning back to using more analog ways of learning and analog ways to do your work, and even using analog tools just for fun to promote more fun and more joy in your life. So, what am I going to cover today? I'm going to cover why analog tools work and why they're staying. I'm going to cover 9 different tools you can start testing out today if you want. I am also going to talk about how you can integrate them into your work and your life. And I'll close up with a few prompts so that you can personalize what you learned today and put it into action. That's always the goal. I don't want to just give you some ideas. I want you to actually apply it and benefit from what you're learning. So let's go back to this conversation of the use of AI and educators pushing back and why, no matter what, analog tools are here to stay. They work and they're not going anywhere. So educators at every level, yes, it includes K through 12. I'm hearing from high school teachers. I'm hearing from college professors. I am hearing even from folks who work with graduate students where they're having to grapple with this big question around, what do we do about AI? What do we do about questions and concerns around academic integrity, around equity, around accessibility, around the fact that AI is also here. I don't know if it's staying. Just like I said analog tools are here to stay. I don't know if AI is staying. I don't know that it's actually sustainable. But currently, it's everywhere. Currently, it's ubiquitous. Currently, it's being added to the workforce across so many industries. And even people I know who hate AI, who work in corporate, are being forced to use it. It's really concerning. But in any case, this episode is not about that. This episode is more about why we're returning to more analog teaching methods. And so for educators like me, what we're doing is more in-class handwritten assignments, more oral presentations, more journaling and using of notebooks, more hand drawing of information, diagrams, creating conceptual maps, and even more project-based assignments like experiential assignments, group work, etc. And this is, again, like I said, this is a response to the use of AI, but also this has always been around. And it's just that with the prevalence of technology, not just AI, I think that especially for certain generations, and I would say probably the generations that come after me, so Gen Z and Gen A, they have always had tech available. And so they haven't always had to rely on the use of analog tools. I see that even in my own children, like they've always had access to tablets and computers. And so analog ways of doing things aren't their immediate go-to, but they work. They help with teaching, they help with learning. And it is a way to make sure that your students are actually learning something instead of producing something that's fake, that's not their words, just for the sake of the grade. And then the other thing I want to mention, because I do use a lot of tools. I do use a lot of tech, and I do use AI in some ways as an assistant. So I want to just like acknowledge that and say that not all students benefit from analog only learning. There are disabled folks, there are neurodivergent folks, and there are some of us who rely on technology for access, for things like speech to text tools or text to speech tools, digital organizers, text readers, captioning, and visual supports. I work with clients across the spectrum in terms of neurodivergence and disability. And so for each of them, I tailor my sessions. Some need captions, some need recordings, some need me to send notes afterward. And so I always ask at the beginning of our time together how they prefer to have that kind of support. And then at the beginning of the call, I make sure that they have those supports that they need. So I'm not rejecting digital tools. I am critiquing AI. It is biased. There are surveillance issues. There are environmental concerns. These are all valid critiques. But so too are the needs of students who may depend on technology for their learning. So again, I'm saying that analog methods work and that they're here to stay. And if you have found yourself maybe over relying on technology and you're thinking you want to start using some analog tools again, here's the reason why. They will help reduce your cognitive overload. Guess what? This work is tactile. It can be visual. And it's great for visual and tactile learners because it gets you learning in a way that you learn best. It can support with your executive functioning. It's especially great for focusing because it's much easier to focus on your planning. Let's say you're using a planner and your calendaring, when you're looking at one thing at a time versus trying to rely on a digital calendar alone or on your phone, and all of a sudden you have 1,000,001 digital distractions. It also helps you with processing information better. Handwriting can help you retain information better. I've been doing that too. So before I would just rely on me typing notes, from my client sessions to make sure I didn't forget important information. And now because I do have an AI note taker that captures a more comprehensive summary, I don't worry about having to type notes. Instead, I'm handwriting notes on flashcards. Why do I do this? It's really just for me to retain the information. That's primarily the reason that I do it. No other reason than that. The great thing about also returning to analog ways of doing things where you're handwriting is that you get to return back to using your own voice because your voice can get lost if you use AI too much. It can even help you with grounding yourself. If you're journaling, this is something that can help to calm your nervous system. If you're coloring, I've been getting really into coloring. That's a whole other episode. I've been using alcohol markers and getting my coloring books. I'm not even doing it with my kids. It started out with my kids. Now it's just for me. So it can really help you to slow down, to calm yourself down, to calm your nervous system. And it can bring back some creativity and play into your life. And we know that we all could benefit from more of that because it's essential for your well-being. So that's why I didn't want to make it about just boosting productivity. I wanted this episode to be also about your joy and your well-being. So right now I'm going to kind of transition into sharing the different ways to bring back some more analog tools, again, to boost productivity and joy. And hopefully you can integrate that into your own hybrid and personalized approach to your work and life. So the first tool I'm going to mention is the one I'm looking at right now. It's on one of my walls here, and it's a wall calendar. It's specifically an annual calendar. I love, love, love having an annual calendar. I started doing this, I don't even know, maybe 2 years ago. And I just printed out the monthly calendars that are available for free, and then I just taped them on my wall. Why is this necessary? Because you get to see the whole year at once. So you get to add your big deadlines, your important events, and it really helps with long-term planning. It's hard to visualize everything when you can only see 1 or 2 weeks at a time with a digital calendar. It also can be fun if you use color-coded markers. I did get that for myself this year. So instead of using just black markers like I always do, I got some color-coded markers for my annual calendar. You can add stickers, you could add, anything you want to make it more fun. The second tool that I'm gonna mention is a whiteboard. This is actually not something that I have, or at least not yet. I'm debating whether or not to get one because of the space issue. But I remember working with a client, I think it was last year, and even though she was in a tight space, she was a grad student, lived in a relatively small apartment with a family, she did have a big whiteboard. And I know she moved it around, but she needed it 'cause she was a tactile learner, and it was the way that she did her brainstorming for her research and her writing. So it's great for brainstorming, it's great for breaking down big projects. It's great, again, if you're a tactile learner, if you have to be physically doing something as you're brainstorming or as you're learning, then that could be good for you. You can make it fun by adding, again, the colorful markers, by giving yourself permission to doodle, to keep it messy, sketching. And even this idea of doodling as you're thinking or as you're learning can both feel fun, but also improve your comprehension of the material. So again, just test it out, see how it works for you, what feels good and what feels fun for you with a whiteboard. I'm still not there yet, so I'll return to that once I do have an actual whiteboard. The next are index cards. And yes, I use index cards a lot. I use them for outlining, I use them for note taking. Just like when something comes to mind, I like to have an index card there to write it down. I don't know why, but I like them more than Post-its. I have to think about that more, but I'm a big fan of index cards. And if you don't use index cards as much as I do, you could also use them for fun. You can use them to write affirmations. You can use them to write helpful phrases. You could even, if you're like, no, I'm not going to use index cards, you can get yourself decks of cards. Things like the rest deck or other kinds of decks that support your joy or your learning or your well being. I'm still debating on getting myself a facilitator deck of cards to help me with making my facilitation of workshops more fun. And I've even created my own deck of cards for sustainable productivity. And it's a digital set of cards, but I'm thinking of printing them and maybe providing them to my clients. More on that. I'm not done with that. I'm still ideating, but flashcards, index cards can be a great analog tool. Another one that I just mentioned were the sticky notes. And sticky notes, for some people, they love them. Other people, they don't like them because you can lose them or they just get everywhere. I'm not the biggest fan of sticky notes, but I know that they can work for some folks. So I love the idea when I see images or videos of folks who use them for a Kanban board. That looks really fun. This is especially if you have the space for it, where you can have 3 columns, one of things you still have to do, another one of things you're currently doing, and another one that's your done column. It can be kind of fun to write on your sticky notes and to move things around from doing to done. That can provide a dopamine boost. And I know that some teams do this too. If you work in corporate, you will see that, like there will be a physical space for you to show what you're working on in that way. You can do that for yourself. If you don't love sticky notes, but maybe you want to test it out just for fun, you could always use sticky notes to add some wins. Just write down a win for the day, add it to a win jar, or a gratitude note for yourself and add it to a gratitude jar. I suggested this to my sister. I was talking to her, and she is struggling as a new mom, even though she's an amazing mom. She's doing an amazing job. Oh my gosh. She's really just, she's incredible. But she's having a hard time with her mental health. And I encouraged her to just to test it out. I was like, what if you just got a really plain jar, any jar that you have, a clear jar, and start to add some Post-its in there of things that you're grateful for, and then review them every week and see how you feel. So that could be a thing that you could try out too. The next tool are planners. And I'm a big fan of not just any planners, but undated planners. Why? Because I am not always consistent with physical planners. And so it allows me to skip a week or a month without feeling bad about it. And I can always return back to it whenever I need to. But if you don't have to worry about that, if you are really good and consistent with using paper planners, then go ahead and get a dated planner. Some folks have asked me about my recommendations. Again, going back to my group coaching session, they asked me what are my recommendations. And so I mentioned the ones that I've used. I've used the Passion Planner. I used that for many years. I've used the Panda Planner. I've used that for 1 year. And I've used the Erin Condren Planner. And I think I've used it 2 or 3 years. And someone in the group recommended the Papier Planner. I might be mispronouncing it, but it's Papier. And that I looked it up. It looked really pretty. Can't I can't say that I've used it, so I can't advocate for it that much. But you can check them out. Check them out and see if any of these sound like something that would be great for you. And how do you make it more fun? Decorate the pages. You can add photos, and I'll talk about photos soon enough. You can turn parts into a journal, add some things that you're grateful for, add some memories. Or if you're into things like astrology, there's another planner that I recommend, which is the Chani Shop's Astro Planner. I've used that once, 1 year, and it was pretty fun. It was neat. I mean, I don't know a lot about astrology. I know some. And so for me, I used it, but I didn't use it consistently. So I'll be honest with that. But it was fun. It was merely for fun. The next tool I'm going to mention is analog journaling. So this is just because I journal a lot, but I type my journaling. So just going back to pen and paper and doing some morning pages, or in the morning, just doing a brain dump of everything that's on your mind. It can help you to externalize what's in your head so that you feel like you've cleared out that mental clutter. You feel less overwhelmed. Journaling is great in general. It's great for creativity, for reflecting, for processing your emotions. It's a tool that I return to time and time again. I don't do it all the time, but I do it regularly enough. At least once a month, I try to get back to journaling, especially as I track my milestones for the month and my challenges. It really helps with my own personal growth. So, big fan of physical journals. Then there's timers, and specifically physical timers. I have so many timers. Oh my gosh. And that must be why I'm so good at timing. I remember my coach one time, we were working on something on a call, and I told her I needed 2 more minutes. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'll give you 2 more minutes. Go ahead and finish what you're doing. And I was doing my thing, and I came back, and she was like, I was looking at the timer, and that was literally 2 minutes. How are you so good with timing? I'm pretty good with timing, even with my workshops, etc. Like, I don't really have a lot of timing issues. So I mentioned to her, it must be from the many years of me using physical timers and looking at the timers as I work. So love, love, love physical timers. There's so many different kinds, so many fun ones. I even have one that I wrap around my neck. Like, let's say I set something in the oven and then I go off and do something else. I am that person that if I use the oven's timer, I will not hear it and then I will burn the thing. So very dangerous for me because, and yeah, I mean, my family, they make fun of me. There's this image of, what is it, like a dumpster fire image, the image of, yeah, dumpster set on fire. And there was a thing that we saw at a store. It must have been a Hallmark store or something where it said, my mom's cooking is fire or something, as in, to make it seem like my mom's cooking is great on one side, and then you turn it to the other side and it's a dumpster fire. Anyway, that's me and my cooking. So I need a timer around my neck so that I can go off and do something else and then come back when I hear the timer that's wrapped around my neck. So anyway, That's another option. There's so many different types of timers. There's even the sand ones, the hourglass timers, and those can be great for you to feel more calm. Some people find it calming or grounding to watch the sand flow. I say some people, it's not me. It stresses me out, but for some, that might be a fun thing to use. I've used sand timers with my kids for when they brush their teeth and they really enjoy it. So physical timers, big, big, big fan of them. Oh my gosh, I get excited talking about it. Can you notice? Can you tell? Okay, let's move on to the next one. The next one is this is the second to last one, by the way. This is anything that's a study tool. And here I'm specifically thinking about highlighters and tabs. So this is like tools that help you when you're working with a book or a workbook or printed writing, like if you have a printed chapter of something that you're working on and reading through. So it's great to have highlighters so that you can easily annotate the parts that are important to remember in the future. It's great to have tabs. Adding tabs to book chapters can help you to better navigate it. I remember seeing someone who was so grateful that their partner had bought them a copy of the DSM. They must have been a therapist. And they added color-coded tabs and wrote down each individual tab and what diagnosis it represented. And it looked really neat. It looked like a lot of work. There were so many tabs on that book, but it looked really, really neat and really cool. And I've done that. I've added tabs to books before, and it's been easier to navigate it. So tabs, highlighters, especially if you're reading things, you've got physical books or physical printed copies of something, it's great to use those. It adds that visual interest, helps you to personalize it. Okay, the last one, this is probably the most fun one. This is less about learning and more just about fun. This is using Polaroids or instant photos. I was going to mention this, but then it came up in conversation with a friend. I was checking in with a friend. Shout out to Nasim Kapdi. She's been a guest on the show. I'll link her episode in the show notes, but I want to shout her out because she brought it up and I was like, ooh, I'm going to have to use it for myself because she said that she uses a Polaroid or an instant photo camera to print pictures. And then she adds those to a journal and she shares those pictures with friends. And I know that a lot of us don't print that many photos anymore. We have a million and one photos on our phones, but we rarely go back and print them. And so I love this idea of using a photo as a way to check in with yourself and to remember some fun moments. You can include these printed photos in your planner. You can include printed photos on a journal. You can put them on a whiteboard or a cork board. I have a cork board in my office, so I can imagine putting them there. Or you can just put them in your wallet, put one in a wallet as a reminder of something that brought you joy. It's just a great way to track memorable moments and milestones. So, big fan of that. And it doesn't even have to be taking pictures of yourself, just as a heads up. It could also be taking pictures to capture moments of things that make you happy. Maybe it's flowers, maybe it's your pet, maybe it's a favorite meal, you name it. Capture those moments. All right. That was it in terms of the tools. Don't try them all. Start with one at a time. You don't need to do all 9. Choose the one that feels either the easiest or the most fun. And then ask yourself, where do I feel the most friction or overwhelm in my work and life? And maybe you can integrate an analog tool to help with that. You can also ask yourself which analog tools might help me slow down or which of them might help me get started on something. For me, that timer always helps with getting started when I find myself that I'm resisting the work. You could also ask yourself, what hybrid system, this is again thinking about incorporating analog and tech tools together, would best support my access needs. So again, I'm not letting go of all of my tech tools. I use a lot of them. I have a resource that includes like 40 plus different AI and tech tools that you can use to support you with your learning and your research and your writing. So I'm not letting them go, but I'm definitely integrating more analog tools too. And again, just the last reminder, if you are serious about integrating some of these tools and you want to develop it as a habit, I highly, highly recommend you adding some environmental tools and stacking this new habit with another pre-existing habit. A lot of times we get so excited, we're like, yay, the new planner, yay, the new fancy pen, or yay, the new fancy marker, tabs, etc. You buy it, you have it, you put it away, and then you never use it. I don't want that to happen. I don't want you wasting your time or your money. So instead, if you're going to get a planner, put it on your desk. Leave it on your desk where you see it. If you're going to get a wall calendar, it needs to be somewhere where you can see it every day. If you're going to use flashcards, they need to be handy. Put them next to your desk. Put them in your purse or in your backpack. Make this work visible and accessible. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, again, is you got to pair it with another pre-existing habit. So what do you already do? Maybe on Sundays, you already check your emails and plan your week. So bring the planner with you. Maybe you're already planning some fun moments with friends and family. So make it a point of, okay, I'm going to put that Polaroid in my bag so that I can bring it with me. So whatever you need to do, either put it somewhere where it's visible or stack it with something else that you already do regularly. So that way you make sure you actually do the thing. That's it. I appreciate you for staying with me. This was supposed to be a short episode, but I guess I got overly excited. So thank you for hanging in there all the way until the end. This was a fun episode for me to record. I hope you felt the same. And if this episode resonated with you, please, please, please share it with someone that could benefit from it. And of course, leave me a review. They mean the world to me. I love reading them. Please do that if you can, as a gift to me for the holiday season. That's it for today. And as always, I'll talk to you all next time. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, here are 3 ways you can support the show. The first is to make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The second way is to get your copy of my free resource kit linked in my show notes. This kit includes tools, worksheets, and podcast playlists on all things grad school, productivity, and personal development. The third way to support my show is to follow me on social media. You can find me on Instagram with the handle @Grad School Femtoring and on LinkedIn by searching my name. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.